Hello there, good evening. You're watching the press preview. It's a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive into us here. Well, it's time to see what is making the headlines with the journalist and the broadcaster, Jenny Kleeman, and the PR consultant, Alex Deane. They're going to be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what is indeed on some of those front pages. Well, the Mirror reacts to the verdict in the so-called Wagatha Christie libel trial with the headline, Win Rooney. You get it, yeah. Now, the Star jeers Rebecca Vardy, declaring, "You're not singing anymore." Not quite sure what that's referring to. Anyway, The Sun highlights the two women's differing responses to the verdict. According to The Eye, Liz Truss's lead in the polls over Rishi Sunak has widened as it appears Mr Sunak's change of heart on tax cuts hasn't helped him gain any ground. Sunak suffers new blow, proclaims The Times, with word that his opponent has been endorsed by the former leadership contender Tom Tugendhat. And The Guardian says Mr Sunak will now try to revive his fortunes by shifting his emphasis to so-called culture war issues and attacking left-wing agitators. And The Express focuses on proposals by Ms Truss to change mortgage rules. That's with the aim of opening up home ownership to more people. While The Telegraph says that she's planning what the paper calls a Thatcherite shake-up at the Treasury. And The Mail leads with the looming hosepipe ban. Now, that could affect up to 17 million people. And The Financial Times carries warnings from the head of the Confederation of British Industry that UK businesses are choosing to cut their ties with China, and that may inadvertently be making the cost of living crisis worse. Well, a reminder that by scanning the QR code that you'll see on the screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us sit and talk about them. Well, as I was saying, we're joined tonight. We have the great pleasure. We are joined by Jenny Kleeman and Alex Deane. Very good to have you both back with us here on Sky News. Always a pleasure, as I was saying. There's an awful lot of Wagatha Christie all over the front pages. But before we get into that, before I indulge us in that pleasurable journey, we do need to talk about some politics, don't we? Big story on the front page of The Times, Alex, and Liz Truss has gained a pretty prominent backer.
Yeah, it feels like a couple of significant moments in a row. Ben Wallace announcing in favour of Liz Truss, and not just announcing that he supported her, but going into some quite punchy details why yesterday. And now Tom Tugendhat doing the same. I think that, this is a contest that's still got a month to run. Things can happen, things can go wrong for a campaign, but it really does feel like it's done now. Liz Truss has gained support across the board. People would not have expected Tom Tugendhat to have endorsed Liz Truss. They would have thought he was a natural stablemate for Rishi Sunak. And this is just another nail, I think, in the Sunak coffin. I really feel for his campaign right now. They're not just on the back foot. They must feel like they are some way behind. And I know that there's a bit of way to go. You can never write off the second option in a binary contest. We've seen that in a number of electoral positions. But right now, it does feel like this is Liz Truss's, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's certainly what The Eye is saying. They're saying Liz Truss heads for number 10 as Sunak's tax U-turn fails, Jenny.
Yes, and it's extraordinary, isn't it? Cast your mind back a few weeks. Rishi Sunak was the establishment candidate. He was the clear frontrunner among MPs. He had the backing of so many Tory whips, former bigwigs. This is incredibly damaging, the way that the campaign has been going for him. He had everything to lose, and he seems to have been losing it. Although, as Alex says, we've got 5 more weeks to go of this. I'm not sure how much more we can take. But this poll is very interesting. It says that Sunak is failing to make ground, but that the public say neither he nor Truss would win against Starmer in a general election, and that can't be very heartening for the Tory party members who are going to be voting at the moment. I mean, I think the endorsement of Tom Tugendhat is particularly interesting because both he and Ben Wallace are very popular among Tory party members.
He's One Nation, isn't he? He's what they call the One Nation Tory.
Centrist Tory. And so if she's got his backing as well as Ben Wallace, it's very significant.
What's happened with Rishi Sunak's campaign, do you think, Alex? Because, I mean, everything seems so slick. It was like he could do, certainly in his days as Chancellor, before he was actively campaigning for the PM's job, he had a very slick sort of team behind him, didn't he? A very slick social media. And now it seems that every time he pops up, and he went alone, didn't he, tonight with Andrew Neil. Liz Truss was celebrating her wedding anniversary. But it feels like every time he opens himself up to some kind of media performance, media scrutiny, the bookies lengthen his odds of being PM.
Well, I think that supposed slickness is part of his problem. I think that Liz Truss has quite adeptly made a positive of her supposed unvarnished approach, and she made a virtue of the fact that she may not be the best presenter, but that she's sincere and authentic. And certainly polls of Conservative Party members, that which is run by Conservative Home and so forth, suggest that message has really come through. I think there's a couple of other things about the Sunak campaign that have led it to difficulty. The first is that he's had some very bad luck with the timing of these things. The allegations against Rishi Sunak, the issues about his tax arrangements and so forth. If they'd been a year ago, he might have been able to brush them off by the time of a campaign. If they were a year from now, then it would have been once he might have done much better in a campaign. But instead, here he is whilst they are still fresh in the mind. And I think especially Tory members don't like the fact that he tried to hang on to a green card, a kind of insurance policy, which meant you could go abroad if your political career didn't work out. And I think that the second thing that hasn't really helped Sunak in the course of his endeavours against Liz Truss is that there's been a momentum of people backing Truss. She's gone from being quite some way behind. Remember, she wasn't even second at one point. You know, she gained endorsement after endorsement. And as we saw Badenoch go and Braverman go and Mordaunt go, she's gained more and more endorsements. No one would have expected Tugendhat to endorse Truss, I think. And the Ben Wallace endorsement seemed quite a significant one. Those things taken together are really hard for a campaign. I imagine they'll be having a couple of stiff drinks tonight and trying to regroup.
Yeah, well, John Craig, our politics correspondent, was saying that Liz Truss is going to be opening the champagne. She's celebrating her anniversary with her husband, but will also probably be celebrating Rishi Sunak's performance on Andrew Neil. And the front page of The Guardian, Jenny, says we've got a treat in store because the desperate Rishi Sunak campaign is going to try and revive his chances by wading into culture war issues.
I would say in Rishi Sunak's defence, at least he went on Andrew Neil, and he did quite decently on there. I think his biggest problem is that he does not like criticism, and he does answer questions that are critical of him with a sort of indignant disbelief that anyone could ever question his record. That doesn't go down very well, I don't think. But yes, this front page of The Guardian, God, this is depressing. This idea that he's going to try and revive his campaign by dipping his toe into the culture wars and talking about how, leftists bulldozing British values, talking about woke nonsense and the pulling down of statues. This is the stuff of 2 years ago of the Black Lives Matter protests. It's really depressing if you think that this is what Conservative Party members are crying out for. The country is actually crying out for vision and insight and leadership. The rest of the front pages that do talk about the leadership debate, they are full of Liz Truss's initiatives to do with mortgages, to do with removing the freeze on new grammar schools. That's regardless of what you think, at least these are actual policies. And he should give Conservative Party members more credit, I would say. Nobody wants to be, indulging in this level of debate. I think both of them are trying to cast themselves as the chippy outsider here. That's what's so funny, even though both of them have been in cabinet positions for a very long time. And both of them are trying to set themselves up as the underdog. Liz Truss, because she doesn't come from privilege, because she wasn't tipped for greatness in the same way that Rishi Sunak is. Him having such odds against him at the moment, he's going to be, really digging down on that, of saying, I'm now the outsider, vote for me. I've got, everybody loves an underdog in this country. But he's going to have to come up with some real ideas and some real policies, because this country is in a cost of living crisis. We really want to see real vision and leadership, and much, much more than just culture war schlock.
OK, well, the clock is against us, I'm afraid, so we're up against the break. But when we come back, we've got all the fun in store for us, because we can get our teeth into the Wagatha Christie verdict, can't we? Thank you very much, both of you. See you again in a minute. And also, we can talk about the hosepipe ban that comes into effect in parts of England. We're going to be discussing the wider implications of that as well when we come back. You're watching the press preview with me again, Jenny Kleeman and Alex Deane. We have now the pleasure of talking what's on a number of the front pages of the tabloids. Of course, the verdict of the Wagatha Christie trial has captured the nation, hasn't it, in many ways. In football parlance, Jenny, a spectacular own goal for Rebecca Vardy.
Yeah, you've just nicked my only football-related pun that I was going to come in.
It's mine too. We'll have to share it.
It was a completely damning judgment. The judge said that Rebecca Vardy's testimony was evasive and unreliable. It was a 75-page ruling. You know what? I normally read these rulings. That's my idea of fun, but I just couldn't stomach it. What a waste of time and money. Colleen Rooney said as much in her statement today. She tried to settle it 4 times out of court, but Rebecca Vardy was determined to press on, no doubt encouraged by her lawyers. Somebody should have said no to her. There are going to be enormous legal costs for her, £3 million, it's estimated, because she has to pay her own costs and a huge chunk of Colleen Rooney's. And that's not going to be nothing to her. We think of footballers and footballers' wives as being incredibly rich, but £3 million is not nothing. It's an enormous amount of money. And just why? What incredible self-harm this was. But this verdict is a victory for common sense. We could all see that this should never have gone to court in the first place. Incredible act of self-harm. And the thing is, in some respects, there are lots of people saying she's damaged her reputation irreparably, but I think maybe she's got what she wanted, which was attention. She has a profile.
And the country loves a redemptive story as well. Alex, just quickly before we talk about hose pipes, were you remotely interested in this at all?
Oh, I was gripped by this. I think that many of us were. I got about halfway through the judgment, so I did a bit better than Jenny, but I confess I couldn't finish it because it was so obvious, as Jenny says. I thought that it should never have come to court. I think Vardy was very ill-advised to pursue it. I thought the phone in the North Sea stuff from her agent was very unattractive. I thought that the arguments offered by Vardy in court didn't go down well at all. And I thought that Colleen Rooney was palpable. I mean, she did an amazing thing, right? The sting was very good. And I think that most of us look at that and say that was quite smart.
Yeah, now Rebecca Vardy is saying the judge has got it wrong. So she's doubling down there.
Never a good thing.
Let's talk about, as if the good times will never end, let's talk about hosepipe bans, Jenny.
Apparently 17 million of us are facing one. There's 1 million people already officially facing one in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. We knew this was coming, didn't we? The papers all this week have been saying this has been the driest July since 1911. Surely it makes sense that we shouldn't be watering our lawns. However, there is a point to make, which is water companies have a very bad record when it comes to mending burst pipes. How many of us have walked down our local high streets and seen them gushing with water? They need to do better when it comes to wastage. But I mean, surely any of us can look outside and see that there is a water shortage. Well, not to shower so much last week. We've got to do what we have to do.
Yeah, we can see plenty more of those coming in as well, can't we? I had wanted to bring you in there, Alex, but we are out of time.